Hi, and welcome to another edition of All Politics is Local. I'm your host, John Featherston. Tonight, I think we have a very exciting interview with Bob Savin. You probably know Bob from Fitness Together, gyms that he owns here in the Metro West area in Ashland and Southborough. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you very much, John.
Thanks for coming. So we're going to talk a little bit about what you've got planned coming up for the upcoming marathon this year. And one of the things we're going to talk about is Tough Ruck. Tough Ruck Nation is a group of military, first responders, and civilians whose sole purpose is to ruck in honor and memory of fallen service members, police, firefighters, and EMTs, while raising funds to support our warriors and families.
Yes.
So I said a lot there, Bob, but for the audience out there, you're going to ruck.
Yeah.
Talk to us about what a ruck is.
Yeah, so a ruck is a little bit different than a run. Right? People are familiar with the Boston Marathon. They're familiar with running a marathon or any smaller distances, 5K, 10Ks. A ruck is carrying what we call a rucksack. So that's what we have here. Okay. Right? It's typically a military bag, has a certain amount of weight to it, and you carry that ruck, and you can run Tough Ruck, but you'll see most people out there walking and carrying that heavy load throughout the entire event.
So let's talk about your ruck right here. I was going to call it a bag, but it's actually a ruck. So you're going to walk 26.2 miles, or run 26.2 miles with a 8-year-old on your back.
Pretty well, yeah, at least. I mean, that bag weighs right now 25 pounds. There are different divisions in Tough Ruck. You can enter either as a civilian or as military, and there's different dress codes for that, but also in terms of a weight category. So anything greater than 15 pounds is the minimum. You can carry the lightweight division is 15 plus pounds. The heavyweight division is 35 plus pounds. So I sort of fall in between there, but always hard to know on the day of the event what kind of things you're going to want to carry, what kind of things you want to have with you, how much water you want to have, and there are stops along the way. But I like to carry some things myself, and for me, there's some personal value to carrying at least 22 pounds.
As an owner of two gyms, Fitness Together here in Ashland and Southborough, I mean, kudos to you that you want to do. I don't even like to drive 26.2 miles, much less carry 25-pound ruck on my back. So talk to me about how you got involved and the motivation for it.
Yeah, it's funny. I used to say the same thing when I first moved here. I grew up in New York and I went to school at Boston University. And when I first moved up here, I was really motivated and driven to want to do the Boston Marathon, but I am not in any way, shape, or form a runner. I think I had done a couple of 5Ks under duress, but I've never been a runner, and I never really was able to train to do the Boston Marathon. And I had set my sights on the 100th Boston Marathon, clearly never got there. But then as time went on and as I got more involved with the military community and helping to volunteer at different organizations, I met some people and they suggested to me that I enter in, knowing what I do for a living. They said, hey, you should think about doing this Tough Ruck with us. Most of the events that I volunteer at, I'm not able necessarily to hike along with them, so this gave me an opportunity to be in that crowd of people, to feel and experience the emotion of the day, but also to fulfill one of my goals, which was to do a marathon. When I found out that Tough Ruck is part of the Boston Marathon, it sort of brought everything together for me, and the opportunity to earn a Boston Marathon medal was really what sealed the deal for me to want to do this.
So this year will be your 6th year?
Yes.
6 consecutive years?
6 consecutive years.
Wow.
Unfortunately, I got started in 2019, had a great experience the first time out, and then we entered into COVID with 2 virtual years, and that sort of is what motivated me to keep going, was that I wanted to have that experience again of being in the crowd, seeing the people, and having that experience with everyone.
Do 26.2 miles with a 25-pound ruck on your back. I'm always amazed, like when you talk to marathon runners here, because marathon's so big, in Metro West. How do you feel the next day? You must be exhausted.
Each year's a different experience,
okay.
And I think that's what it's been, is that my first year I didn't know what to expect. And it's so different training for me for Tough Ruck than it is to be a runner. If you're a runner, you go out, you run every day, you do a few miles, and you build up that endurance. And even at the longest run you might do might be 20 miles. For an experienced marathon runner, they're still going to finish that in a few hours. I went out this past weekend and did a training ruck. We did 13 miles. It took us about 4 hours. And then we looked at that and said, geez, that's only halfway, right? And I don't have 6-8 hours a day, on a weekend to train for this. So you never know going in really what that's like if you don't train that mileage. So yeah, that was a real hard thing for me, and from an experience standpoint, is to be able to train and mentally to be able to prepare for it. So, each year's a little different, and you asked how I feel, is that first year, I felt what I thought was pretty good going in. And I was great, and we even had a few clients from Fitness Together join us that day. And as we were going up the last hill, I was cheering them on, and we were excited about it, and we could see the finish line, and then all of a sudden, I had this incredible pain in my calf, and it was throbbing, and I looked down, and I saw it almost like my calf had a heartbeat. And I'm looking at it, and I stopped in my tracks, and I'm holding on, and someone, a big Marine, came up behind me, and I saw that not only did he have his ruck on his back, he had someone else's ruck on his front.
Wow.
He was helping someone else, get to the finish line. And he came to me and he says, you okay? Can I help you? And I said, I looked at my calf and I was in agony. And he says, hop on, I'll carry you.
Oh.
And it was at that point that I knew that I had to figure out a way to get to the finish line. And I did, and I got there, and it felt great, but there were some things I don't remember about finishing. I was uncomfortable for a few days afterwards. So like I said, just every year it's kind of inspired me to train more. And I've had some good years, and then a couple years ago I had a really bad year. I got dehydrated, and I think most runners understand this too. Those that participate in the marathon every year, is you can't account. It's so hard in this area to train for weather. Right?
That was going to be one of my questions.
Yeah,
What's an ideal day?
I don't know. I mean, I think like we were out on Saturday and it was overcast and 50 degrees or less, and that felt good. But there were mornings, we sort of assemble at around, I think it's 6 in the morning, and it's generally in April pretty cold at 6 in the morning.
Right.
So you're there, you got your pants on, your sweatshirt on, and you're trying to stay warm and go about the day. And then I think a few years ago, it warmed up to 60 degrees, and not that that was terrible, but it was warm.
Yeah.
And I didn't account for it. I didn't take off layers fast enough. And by the time I hit about 9 or 10 miles, I was dehydrated, and I didn't realize it. My wife saw it on me and could tell that something was wrong, and my posture was wrong. My back hurt. Oddly enough, I finished probably with my best time ever that year, but I was laying on the ground for 2 hours afterwards.
Really?
Couldn't move. And then last year, I think I got done, and I said, hey, anybody want to go out and get something to drink? Like I was like, let's keep going.
So what's the toughest part of the course? I mean, you come out of Hopkinton into Ashland, and then you hit the kind of a flat track into Framingham and Natick, and then you hit Heartbreak Hill. I mean, so where's the worst part of the route for you guys?
No, so actually, so this is something that I guess we should have talked about is different about Tough Ruck. Unfortunately, Tough Ruck is not on the marathon course.
Oh, okay.
So years ago, when Tough Ruck started back in 2013, there was a small group of ruckers who were participating in the Boston Marathon. They were carrying their rucks. They were, people from back then probably remember them, through the streets. Mm-hmm. And this day, now you still see some people in uniform, but back then they had their rucks. It was a small group. But as they were finishing in 2013, that's when the bombs went off.
Right.
And when that happened, they were just crossing the finish line. They were some of the first responders on site that day. So they helped in any way they could, but it was after that year that some of the rules changed. And ruckers were no longer allowed to carry backpacks that next year. And I don't know if that's changed. I don't follow the Boston Marathon as closely, but that particular year, in 2014, they said, we're sorry, guys, this is something we can't honor,
Sure.
This year. But if you'd like, we appreciate what you do, where you've been, and we want to help you. Why don't we create this other event? All right. So they branched off from the Boston Marathon. That's how Tough Ruck was sort of created and expanded. So they moved it to Minuteman National Park in Concord.
Okay.
And it's the day before the Boston Marathon. So it's everything about the marathon, sort of, it's 26.2 miles. It's sponsored by the BAA. We ruck the whole thing, and when we get done, we get the unicorn medal.
Nice.
But it just has to be done the day before, and they moved it off course so they can make their preparations for Boston Day on Monday.
That makes sense. So it is the Sunday before
The Sunday
Marathon
before.
Monday.
It is, yeah.
And it starts in Concord?
It starts in, yeah.
And
So
it's where?
In Concord, so it's,
Concord,
it goes through Concord and Lexington, starts at the Finn School.
Oh, okay.
And weaves its way through Concord, along some on the bike path there as well.
And what time of day is that?
Early in the morning, I forget exactly what time it goes off. I think usually around 8 maybe. I know we assemble sometime, I think it's at 6. But it's, but you asked about like sort of the hardest part is, the course has changed a little bit over the years. So there's been different types of things. Like I remember my first year, we were back and forth in Minuteman National Park a few times. So that was sort of challenging mentally to be sort of retracing your steps and to see people kind of coming and going. You felt like you were just on a wheel and you weren't getting anywhere. The one that I had difficulty with a few years ago, we were more in the woods than we had been in years past. So the terrain was a little uneven, whereas most of the time it's flat on pavement, on tamped dirt. So that usually works out well. But that's always the hardest part is, I think for me, I mean, physical, you can train for physical. It's harder to train for elements and for mental.
Sure.
And that is, I think, and I used to, I mean, as a personal trainer for years, I've coached athletes and marathoners, and we talk a lot about that, is that, I can always prepare somebody physically. Mentally, you have to be ready as well, when you're participating in a competition.
Oh, I would think the mental is the biggest. So what do you wear on your feet? Running shoes, boots?
I wear, for me, I wear Merrell boots, but people I've seen in all different kinds of footwear. If you enter in the military division, you are not only wearing, full dress, but you're wearing your issued boots as well. So I've seen people wear full military dress, and military boots and run that thing in 4 hours.
4 hours.
And I don't know,
That's
with
amazing.
35 pounds on their back.
So let's talk about the Ruck.
Yes.
We don't call it a backpack, we call it a Ruck.
Yeah.
So why is that? Why is it called a Ruck?
That one I can't answer for
Okay.
you. So I'm a civilian, so I don't
Right.
have a good answer for that one.
Okay.
And I will tell you a funny story about the Ruck. So when I got started doing this in my first year of training, I was training with a bunch of veterans, and they suggested, the backpack I was wearing wasn't going to cut it for 26.2 miles. So they suggested I go to the Army Navy surplus, and I pick out a Ruck. So I walked in and having no idea what I was looking for, I just asked the poor man at the counter if he could help me. And he pointed up and said, "Those are Rucks, pick one." And I looked, and my next question, I was training with a lot of Marines. And I said, "Please, please, please, you have to give me a Marine color backpack."
Right.
Ruck. And he corrected me right away and said Ruck. And because I said, if I pick the wrong color, I'm going to get picked on. So I ended up with this Ruck, and he got it all fitted for me. And there's all kinds of straps and gadgets and places to hide things. And again, for me, and for this event, it's just about carrying the weight. I can imagine it has all kinds of very specific purposes as to how these things are designed. And I was taught one thing about it when the gentleman at the Army Navy was fitting me for it. He told me there are two straps at the top that if you pull on them, it'll disconnect the entire bag from your body. So if you find yourself submerged in water, it is a very quick way out. And I had to remind him again that I was doing a marathon, and if I found myself submerged in water, I made a wrong turn. So,
Did he laugh, I hope?
yeah, he just looked at me and said, "Please buy the bag and get out." So,
Cash or credit, yeah.
That's right.
So talk to me about, what you've got here.
yeah, so there's a few patches on my bag from different events that I've done or different events I've participated in. There's a couple of ribbons on the bag now, and those are what we consider Ruck tags, or they're basic luggage tags. But we had those made for a different organization that I volunteer with called Irreverent Warriors.
Okay.
As far as Tough Ruck goes, and I didn't bring them with me today, but during the Tough Ruck, you'll see a lot of people, most people during Tough Ruck are carrying ribbons on their bag, longer ribbons of yellow, white, red, to signify the different either branches or EMT, fire, police, that they want to honor somebody. So most of my ribbons are yellow to honor fallen service members.
Nice.
That are unable, like you said in the opening, about unable to ruck with us anymore. So we carry those names for our entire ruck.
So what was your motivation to get involved with this? I mean, did you have a friend, a family, coworker?
Well, some of it was the motivation to do the event. There was motivation to be with the people that I was meeting through Irreverent Warriors and through that organization. And over time, I've learned more and more about some of the people, people that I knew, people that friends knew that had passed. And it became sort of more important to honor them and to carry those names. And that's a big part. I mean, I said, you talk about like mental motivation, and when you're walking that distance and when you're feeling that pain, to look ahead of you, to see other people sort of forging on, to look at the names on the bags, not just the ones I'm carrying, but to see the names on other people's packs, to see pictures they're carrying, things that they're holding dear, that just drives you that much more to get done. Or, 8 hours, it takes us, anywhere from 6 to 8 hours if you're walking to finish this. There's a lot of people to talk to. There's 1,000 people that join in on this event. So as you're going, you're not necessarily always with the same crowd of people. And it's easy to strike up conversations with people and say, hey, tell me about the people on your pack.
Good.
Okay. And so you get to learn a lot about the people that they're honoring. And that's, as I said, that's the biggest motivation, is to finish for them.
I mean, in 6 to 8 hours to do it, I mean, you've got to go to the bathroom, you've got to eat.
Yes.
You've got to hydrate. So talk to me, that the mental piece of this to me is almost as fascinating as the physical piece. I mean, like I said, I don't like to drive 26 miles, much less, carry, that back. But how do you prepare for the mental? We talked about it a little bit in the beginning, but
yeah.
I mean, when you're struggling, what do you tell yourself?
It's just a lot of practice, and I mean, for me, and I think everybody handles it differently. A lot of the practice that I do is often by myself during the day. As a personal trainer, I'm busiest in the morning and in the evening, so I have a lot of free time in the afternoons, and I'll run down over to the rail trail and hop on there and go as far as I can, in whatever time I have, and that's a lot of alone time. So I have my headphones on. I can think about things. I can analyze how I'm feeling. I can pay attention to my stride. So it's looking inward sometimes and thinking about those things. But as I said, it comes with practice. Mm-hmm. So the more times I go out, the more times I know what things feel like and what they're supposed to feel like, and how to adjust when things don't feel well. What I've always told myself, again, because of the time involved in this, a lot of my hikes are 6 to 8 miles on a regular basis. So
always with the Ruck.
Always with the Ruck.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm sure there'll be plenty of people out there that have said, I've seen that guy. I'm on the trail a lot. But I'll go out there, and on event day, I will go out there, and I know the first 8 to 10 miles, simple. I do it all the time, so I don't even have to think about it. If something feels wrong in those first 8 to 10 miles, like it did a couple of years ago, I know there's a problem.
It's going to be a rough day.
It's going to be a rough day. So those 8 to 10 miles, no problem at all. As I told you before, is any long training rucks that we do might only be 12, 13, 15 miles. So that next 8 to 8 miles or so, the second third, if you will, of the marathon, is when you start to feel things. That's why I always tell people that are new to this. I said, the first 8, 9 miles, you're going to feel great. Piece of cake, no problem. You're excited. Everybody's excited.
I'd be past that on the side of the road.
The next 9 miles, you start to feel things. All right, the bag gets a little heavy on your back. Your feet start to get a little tingly. All right, your knees start to ache a little bit. So you start to notice things. If you haven't trained beyond that distance, and most people don't often train beyond that distance, that's when you have no idea. And I've done 5 of them now, so I sort of know what to expect at that point. But again, it's always different. So the last third of the marathon, you're just hanging on. And you just tell yourself that, it's not going to feel any worse. Whatever I'm feeling now is what I'm going to feel the rest of the way. Okay. And that's what it is. It's just, yep, my back hurts. My knees hurt. Okay, it can't hurt any more than this. And we just do it.
So what do you eat and drink during all this?
For me, I try to keep my sodium levels up. I'm drinking water, Gatorade, whatever people are handing out. I try to keep as much fluid. But
electrolytes?
Electrolytes, that type of stuff. So definitely working on those. For food, again, I've started to eat things that I never thought I would eat, and here comes the personal trainer side of me. But people love this. So I eat a lot of potato chips. Because they go down easy.
They've got salt on
a
them.
lot of salt on them. The carbohydrate level, so it helps. And they're easy to eat. We're not running, so it makes it a lot easier to eat things.
Right.
I was never a big fan of beef jerky, and I don't eat it on a normal basis ever. But my first Tough Ruck, somebody was handing some out, and I said, I'm hungry. And I took it, and it was fantastic. Same thing, keeping the protein and the salt. And So things like that, things that go down easy. I don't like all the gels and goos and power bars. I don't like that stuff. So I just try to find other snacks and peanut butter, things like that that I can get down easy.
Wow. So you mentioned it a couple times tonight, Irreverent Warriors.
Yes.
Let's talk about that, because we don't have a lot of time left, but we definitely
Yeah.
want to get that in.
So Irreverent Warriors is another organization that I volunteer with. I'm actually the lead coordinator for Irreverent Warriors here in Massachusetts.
Nice.
And their mission is to bring veterans together using humor and camaraderie to improve mental health and prevent veteran suicide. It's that simple. There's no sort of it's not a marathon. It's something totally different. But really, our mission is to just get veterans out of isolation. We know, and this gets back to sort of my ruck and what I carry, but 22 veterans a day, and that number's been debated a bit, but 22 veterans a day commit suicide. And we're looking to end that problem, and we're looking to, like I said, bring them out of isolation, bring people together so that they know that they've got a network of people that have been through what they've been through and are available to talk and work on the things they need to work on.
Kudos to you, because you've touched on a hot, we didn't even know, but you've touched on a hot button with me with this, is that you look at the young soldiers now in their 20s and 30s that have served 2, 3, 4 tours.
Yes.
In Afghanistan or in the Middle East, which is unheard of. We've never asked soldiers to do that now. They come back home, and there's no mental health help for them. There's no, communities even like Ashland has a part-time veterans agent now, and most of the communities in Metro West have part-time service agents. So what you're doing here, I think, is huge work. And if Elizabeth Warren or Ed Markey or Kathleen Clark is watching this, this is the guy. This is the model. Because there are so many young veterans that are struggling with the mental health crisis. And then you throw a worldwide pandemic on top of all of that. Mental health is the biggest thing going.
Right.
So kudos to you. I mean, so how do people learn more about it?
Yeah, so irreverentwarriors.com is the website. We have several events, and that was the thing. When we started this, or I say we, but when Irreverent Warriors was started, it was a simple premise: get veterans together, go for a ruck, enjoy each other's company. What we found over time was that to simply we have a big event every year called the Silkies Hike, where the veterans will come together, they'll put on their real short shorts, they call them silkies or ranger panties, or they were the PT shorts that they wore back in the day for training. So it's humor and camaraderie, right? You can't take yourself too seriously when you're wearing tiny shorts and walking through the streets. So, but the idea is to come out and have a good time. Well, when they were doing that, to have that event once a year and to say our mission is to prevent veteran suicide, thanks, we'll see you next year, didn't really cut it. So what they started to do was to say, you know what, as a lead coordinator, hey, we'd like you to have more events. We'd like you to get people together more often. So we started doing other things. We have a fundraiser coming up on April 20th. We have a hike in Milford, a Silkies hike, and the Silkies hikes are for veterans only, veterans, active duty, reservists, and guard. Civilians can volunteer and they can help out along the way, but that hike itself, on May 25th, is just for those categories. And then we have another one in Worcester on October 5th. But all of those events, and not just here in Massachusetts, but anywhere in the country, can be found on irreverentwarriors.com. But there are hikes and events throughout the country now and beyond. There was a hike recently. They're doing them now in England. There's one scheduled for Normandy. There's one in Italy. So they're all over. Puerto Rico. Yeah.
So does the Irreverent Warriors have social media?
Yeah, and those are private groups, but if you're a veteran, if you're active duty, if you'd like to get involved, you can go and find Irreverent Warriors Milford, Irreverent Warriors Worcester on social media, on Facebook, on Instagram, and keep up to date with some of the things going on. Or they can reach out to me directly, and as I said, we can make sure that they get in the right group. And what's been great is that you talked about mental health and other events. There are so many groups sort of expanding on that idea. So even within Irreverent Warriors, we have a gaming group, we have a fitness group, we have a sobriety group. So there's different things that people are interested in and involved with to sort of fit that niche of where they want to be. And the great thing for me, I got involved with all of this because, again, I didn't come from a military background, military family. I didn't understand that there was this network of people that I wanted to help. And now that I'm involved, I'm finding many, many, many more groups and people and networks to interface with. There's all kinds of groups beyond just Irreverent Warriors that do things to help veterans if they're not getting the help they need publicly.
Well, God bless you. Bob Savin from Fitness Together. I mean, you talk about an American hero. That's what you are. I mean, you're making a difference in people's lives. You're giving back to your communities. You're giving back. So what have we missed? What more do we have to do to talk about your ruck coming up on Sunday, April 14th, the day before the marathon? What more do people need to learn about that?
Well, I think that, to get involved with Tough Ruck, they are still looking for volunteers as well, or if you just want to come out and see the event and support the hikers that day. As I said, it'll be in Concord. You can go to toughruck.org. That's a great place to get more information, to sign up as a volunteer. There's ways to donate to Military Friends Foundation as well. But those are all things with Tough Ruck. I mentioned about Irreverent Warriors.
Give the website one more time.
Yeah, irreverentwarriors.com for their website there. And I think, the last thing I could say about all of this is just, get involved. Because for me, starting out, when I was asked the question back in the day as to do you support the military, I thought I did because I donated some money once upon a time, or I might have, left a couple of dollars on the table somewhere. But until when I was challenged to get involved and really support the military in that way by donating my time, my presence, I find that that's the best thing that you can do to support our military, is to be involved and be present.
Well, what a great guy you are. Hey, we can't let you get out of here without getting a shot of you having your ruck on your back.
Yep.
So we'll have you suit up here a little bit.
Yep. So there's 25 pounds in here now. So we strap in, and this keeps it pretty tight. There's a couple of different straps on here, straps around the waist, but all that keeps the bag pretty tight to my body. And, as I said, when you're moving, it's got a good frame to it, so it really, it becomes just part of your body.
That's Bob Savin from Fitness Together here in Ashland. You've been watching All Politics is Local. We'll talk again real soon.